Hey everyone, this is Brian Ferguson. I know if you're watching this that you're enjoying the Bumps and Thumps podcast. In order to continue the podcast and get the guests on that everyone wants to hear about, we need support from listeners like you. There are a few ways you can do this. One is going to anchor.fm, which will be on the bottom of your screen here, and click the support button. There you can make a monthly contribution to support the podcast. There's also, we have a Teespring store. We have a link down at the bottom of the screen as well for that. And we have products such as t-shirts like this one I'm wearing, backpacks, glassware, and other great items for you to purchase. Those purchases go directly back into the podcast and get on guests that require financial compensation. Thank you again for your support. Go to those websites and support our podcast, and we will continue to bring the guests that you want to hear about, past and present. And thank you for your support and enjoy the podcast. Thank you for another edition of Bumps and Thumps, the talk of wrestling. I'm Brian Ferguson. My guest today is no stranger to pro wrestling. He is most remembered as a member of the tag team Demolition, known as Smash, and Krusher Kruschev as a member of the Russians. His many accomplishments include winning the NWA Mid-Atlantic title, NWA Six-Man Tag Team title, NWA World Tag Team titles, and is a three-time former WWF World Tag Team Champion. He was also awarded the Tag Team of the Year award from the Cauliflower Alley Club in 2015 and was inducted in the New England Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Barry Darsow. Barry, thanks for coming on the show today. Really appreciate it.
Brian, it's about time, huh? You've been trying to get me on this show for a long time, and finally I'm here. I'm glad I am.
Oh, I'm glad too. I know you're a busy man. You got a lot of things going on, and I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to be on here today. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
All right, so first I'd like to talk about, if we can, I know you're from Minnesota. Let's talk about growing up in Minnesota, and I know you've had some pretty good classmates when you're in high school. Let's talk about how you grew up a little bit, if we could.
When I was a kid, or
when you were a kid.
Well, when I was a kid, I lived about probably 5 blocks from a park, and I kind of lived at the park all the time. I played hockey, baseball, and football. And I have an older brother that I hung around with, and that's what got me, good at sports. And when, I don't want to brag myself up, but I was pretty good at all the different sports. And
you go ahead and brag yourself up.
Yeah, I was really good at baseball and really good at hockey. And I got recruited by Herb Brooks for the Minnesota Gophers, and I ended up turning him down, and I signed for football at the University of Northern Iowa. And so my whole life was sports, and my mom just was incredible. Mm-hmm. She backed me on everything I did. I was spoiled rotten, had the best hockey skates, best sticks, best baseball gloves, best everything. Yeah. And we had, our family didn't have any money. We were pretty poor, but she spent the money on me for sports, so that was pretty neat.
Yeah. Sounds like a great lady.
Oh, yeah, and she just passed away a couple of weeks ago, in fact.
I'm sorry to hear that.
92 years old and lived an incredible life.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah, to be missed.
Wow. That's amazing. Now, I did a little research, and I noticed you when you were in high school, you had some pretty good classmates with you there.
Oh yeah,
Rick Rude, Kurt Hennig. Did you ever have any interaction with them in school, or did you just?
Oh yeah, all the time. In fact, Rick Rude lived about 3-4 blocks from me, and so I knew him from when I was, first, second grade even.
Oh wow! Okay.
And Kurt, I really got to meet him when I was in junior high, and some of Kurt there. In fact, one of Kurt's best friends, Brian D. Clerk, I played hockey with him. That's how I got to really know Kurt.
Okay.
And then Kurt's sister, Sandy, she was a year older than I was, so I knew her pretty well in school too.
Oh, very interesting.
And then then Scott Simpson, who was Nikita Koloff. I grew up playing baseball and football with him, and he just lived probably 5-6 blocks from me. And then
He's a real. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And then Tom Zink, we were on the same baseball teams growing up too. So yeah, we all went to school together.
That's pretty amazing. You know, I did a podcast almost probably about a year ago with Nikita. Yeah. Nice guy, really nice guy. Really interesting person to talk to. And speaking of that, getting into professional wrestling, what was it for you that got you interested and actually getting into it?
Well, Rick Rude and the Road Warriors, both the Road Warriors, we all worked at the same bar in Northeast Minneapolis called Grandma B's. Okay. And every night it was fighting our way out of that bar, you know, throwing people out, doing everything. And one night we're all having a couple beers after work, and Eddie Sharkey, who was a bartender there, he says, "I got to get you guys into wrestling. You guys want to get in?" And then we just said, you know, it sounds like a good thing to do. Let's do it. So he got us in a wrestling camp that he had, and that's how we all got in.
That's interesting. What was the camp like for you? Was it pretty rugged?
Well, it was rugged because we didn't know what we were doing, and Eddie Sharkey never smartened us up or anything on it. So it was pretty brutal.
Yeah, I heard his camp and Vern Gagne's camp, where I've heard are probably two of the most toughest ones. But
yeah, and Brad Ringens had a really great camp too, and his wasn't easy at all either.
Yeah, that's interesting. So after you got trained, you went to Mid-South, I believe, right? Or where did you go after you got trained up?
After I got trained, I went to Hawaii.
Okay, Hawaii. Okay.
And I wrestled for Mrs. Maivia there.
Okay.
And then from there, he sent me to New Zealand for Steve Ricard. And so I went back and forth to New Zealand, Tonga, Samoa, Hawaii, went quite a few trips there. Wow. And then from there, I went to Florida. Dusty Rhodes was the booker there.
Okay.
And I was there for about 3-4 months and just trained and got to know a lot of the guys and everything in that territory. And at that time, that territory was unbelievable. It was, top guys. They were selling out all over the place. It was big time wrestling then.
Yeah.
And Dusty came to me one day and he says, "Barry," "I'm going to send you to Atlanta." So I drove up to Atlanta, and then I worked for Georgia Championship Wrestling there, and Ole Anderson was the booker at that time. And I've already known Ole from, he used to come down to the wrestling camp.
Okay.
And at that time, the Road Warriors were there at that time also. So it was pretty neat to hook up with my friends.
Yeah.
Then I spent some time from there, and then Ole told me, he says, "I'm going to get you down to Mid-South with Bill Watts, and you're going to really learn how to wrestle." Okay. So then I drove down to Mid-South Wrestling, and I spent quite a long time down there.
Yeah.
And worked for Bill Watts, and I lived with Ernie Ladd down there.
Oh,
and
wow.
Grizzly Smith helped me out a lot.
Okay.
And I was down there for a couple of years, and I really learned how to wrestle and do interviews and all that stuff. So
yeah,
it was pretty neat.
And then I understand you got called up to go to the Carolinas, and they wanted you to be a Russian. What was that
Well,
like for you, wanting to be or becoming a Russian?
well, when I was down in Mid-South, I wasn't. I was a baby face, but Jim Duggan was down there, the Junkyard Dog, Kerry Taylor, Magnum TA. So being a baby face down there wasn't a good situation. So Bill Watts, he teamed me up with Nikolai Volkov, and I became Krusher Kruschev down there.
Okay.
So then, after I was there for a couple of years, I left there and went to Florida Championship Wrestling, and I was still Krusher Kruschev, and then I teamed up with Jim the Anvil Neidhart and David Sierra. He was the Cuban assassin.
Oh, okay.
And we had a great run down there. I really liked that territory. Worked for Eddie Graham then.
Yeah.
And then that's Flair used to come in all the time, back and forth, and we'd ride together. And I knew Rick from the early days when I first got in the business.
Okay.
And he called me up one day and he says, "Barry, you got to come up to the Carolinas." I told him, I said, "Rick, I don't want to leave Florida. This is the best territory." I was home every night.
Yeah.
And Rick said, "No, we really need you up here. And we want you to team up with Ivan Koloff." And Nikita Koloff was really green at the time and needed some help. So I told him, I said, "Rick, I got a really good guarantee, money-wise," and I was very happy. And so I said, I'm not saying no, but I just can't afford to go up there. I'm doing too well.
Yeah.
So I said, "Okay." He says, "I'm going to have Dusty call you." And I said, "Rick, you don't have to have Dusty call me. I'm not coming up right now."
Yeah.
Well, about a week later, all of a sudden the phone rings and it's Dusty, and Dusty says, "Barry, baby." He said, "I did you the favor of getting you in Atlanta, and he says, "No, I need a favor in North Carolina." And I said, "Dusty, what kind of guarantee can I give you?" He says, "I guarantee you're going to have a great time and you're going to make more money than you ever did."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, when's that?" He says, "When the territory pops." And he says, "You're going to be one of the guys that's going to help pop the territory."
Yeah.
So we talked for quite a while, and finally I said, "All right, Dusty, I'm going to put my notice in here, and I'll be up there, how's a month?" He said, "Perfect." So then I packed my bags again and went to North Carolina, and Nikita had an apartment waiting for me, and we started with the building's half full or whatever, and after about 2-3 months, it was sold out everywhere.
Yeah.
And I made really good money. So
I
was Krusher Kruschev with Ivan Koloff then and Nikita.
I remember. I'm from Wisconsin, but we used to get back in the mid '80s when cable was coming in. We got TBS.
Yep.
And so I would Saturday night, I would be watching. And I'd see you three on there, and you guys played it to the T. I'll tell you what. I know today it's a lot different, but then you guys made it so believable. So real, and I just always wanted to go through the television and wring your guys' necks. I mean, I was a teenager at the time, but you did your job so well, and I just, that to me was the golden years for me. Anyways, was those in the '80s, '70s, '80s, early '90s, guys like you, and what. That's feud you had with Sam Houston. Did you enjoy that? I mean, you guys had a lot of good matches.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Sam Houston was a really good worker.
Yeah.
And it seems like every territory I went, I learned so much from all different people, and I did learn a lot from Sam. And he was young, but he grew up in the business, and the more time you spend with people in the ring, you just keep learning, and that's kind of how I looked at it. So I really liked working with Sam, and he was real easy.
Yeah.
And it was tough to get hurt unless you hurt yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk about chemistry a little bit. who was the person or persons, either as a singles, an opponent, or tag team, that you think you had the most chemistry with? It just flowed.
Throughout my whole career,
Yeah, whoever it was.
my opponent.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's so hard to say that.
Yeah.
When I was in Mid-South working with Jim Duggan, we really clicked.
Yeah.
And the Junkyard Dog and Terry Taylor. I'll tell you, Terry Taylor, I guess he taught me more than anything, and he was one of the guys I learned how to work.
Yeah.
And he might have been Terry Taylor back at the day, but I don't know. The Rock and Roll Express, when we were tag team, was phenomenal. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I know. I just figured sometimes guys can tell you, hey, I had the best matches with, so and so, and we just flowed. And you mentioned Terry Taylor. I don't think Terry Taylor gets enough credit for what he's done in the business.
He does, and he was instrumental on helping me in this business way back.
And honestly, I don't think you get enough credit for what you've done. I mean, you've done so much, to me anyways, and I know a lot of fans, once they listen to this, will agree that, you brought out a lot of different things and different people in matches, and it does not go unappreciated. I really appreciate it. I know fans out there, and I just want to let you know that. So
well, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad I'm on this podcast.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't just calling you to harass you. I wanted you on the show because I really liked you. So, your best, your feuds. You had some feuds with, the Rock and Roll Express, the Road Warriors, Dusty Rhodes. Who what was at least one of your favorite feuds that you had with either an opponent or the opposite tag team?
One of the best feuds was the Rock and Roll Express.
Yeah.
When Ivan and I were together, and then when Axe and Smash were together, that was really tough to pick a team because, the Brain Busters, the Heart Foundation, the Bulldog. There were so many tag teams that it just worked well with.
Yeah.
But the Road Warriors,
Yeah. I'll tell you, speaking of, when you were Demolition with Axe, Bill Eadie. Is that how you say his name?
Yep, Bill Eadie.
Okay,
yep.
okay. I want to make sure I said it right. I thought you guys were phenomenal. Even as, baby faces. I liked you better as heels, but even baby faces, you guys clicked so well.
Right.
And just seemed like you were just naturally always a tag team together. What was it like working with him?
Oh, he was the best. I was a big fan of Bill's, when he was the Masked Superstar.
Yes.
So I kind of knew everything that he was going to do just from, I knew how he worked.
Yeah.
So I think that might have been why we were such a good team together.
Yeah.
Is because of that,
Okay. Yeah.
But he was definitely a great partner to have to learn and finish off my career with.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys were phenomenal. When you first came on the scene with when you had Mr. Fuji as your manager, I didn't like you guys then either. So you did your job well again.
God, that's what I like being the heel,
Yeah. Do you like being the heel? Did you like being the heel more than a baby face?
I loved being the heel.
Yeah.
I really loved being the heel.
Yeah. Because you get to kind of do some different things and get some heat. Did you ever get heat in real life with anybody? I mean, did you have any problems with anybody as far as working with anybody or anything like that?
No, I never ever had any problems. I got along pretty good with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I never had any problems.
That's good. That's good to hear. So, other feuds. What was probably the worst feud you had, or didn't click, or it didn't go well? You don't think, in your
Well,
mind?
when Bill and I Action Smash when we wrestled the Road Warriors
Mm-hmm.
in up with Vince,
Yeah.
that one I didn't like that at all because that was one of those ones that um, we had good matches, but they weren't great matches,
Yeah.
and it didn't and it shouldn't have been like that because they were a great team
Yeah.
and we were a great team, but the way they put us all together,
Mm-hmm.
it just wasn't right, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that made it kind of tough. It was like pulling teeth,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I think it was hyped up. I remember that, and it was hyped up or promoted, you know, and yeah, it just to me, and I don't mean to be disrespectful here. I just didn't think it for how it was marketed and promoted. It didn't turn out the way it was. I expected it.
No, not at all. And that's how I felt. And
Yeah.
as a guy, that every match meant so much to me. That
Right.
was disappointing. And
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to Animal, before he passed away. We talked about it a
Yeah.
lot,
Yeah.
and he was really disappointed too.
Yeah.
And the two teams. One thing about Action Smash, we could wrestle anybody,
Yeah.
and they could be smaller guys, bigger guys, and we always had really good matches. But
Mm-hmm.
for some reason, with the Road Warriors, it just didn't click right.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that it was their fault or our fault. It's
Mm-hmm.
just sometimes it's not put together correctly, and then
Yeah.
it's hard to work around. And
Yeah.
that's really what it was like. It was hard to work.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know it, but Bill and I have been together now 35 years.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's our
That's
35th anniversary on January 26th.
oh
So,
wow.
yeah. So I was just with him in Houston. We did an autograph deal down there, and
Yeah.
we were talking, and it's like, how in the world could we be together 35 years? It doesn't seem like it's been 35 years.
Yeah.
You know?
Time flies when you're having fun, right?
I guess that's it.
that's that's great. I mean, I've heard a lot of good things about Bill, and I know he had some health issues, last year. And I'm glad he's doing a lot better now.
Yeah, he almost died from the COVID shot.
Yeah, I read that. That's terrible.
Yeah, but he's doing really well now.
I'm glad to hear that. That's wonderful. Let's talk about. So you've held a lot of titles. You've held. What do you think was in your mind, the most accomplishment as far as getting a title for you? What was the Yes, I.
When we won the tag titles from Andre the Giant and Haku in Toronto, that was probably the most meaningful one, and because it was Andre and Haku, both of those guys were friends of ours, and we were with them all the time for years, but and we never thought we'd be wrestling them, and Andre was. I mean, that's one of the greatest things in your life is to be able to say, "Hey, I wrestled Andre the Giant," and then we wrestled him and beat him, and then we had a match with Andre the Giant and Giant Baba in Japan, and that was a huge match. So that's kind of the highlight, I guess, of my whole career.
Yeah, that's a pretty good highlight to me.
Yeah, and it's hard to not say 15 years before that when I won the TV title against whoever, or,
Mm-hmm.
when Ivan and Nikita were the 6-man tag team champions. I mean, all
Yeah.
that was very important, but
Yeah.
it's hard to, but I guess because it's Andre the Giant and
Yeah.
Haku,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh yeah. I've heard a lot of things about Haku. I heard he's a heck of a nice guy, but don't get him upset.
Haku is one of the greatest guys in the business. That's how good of a guy he is.
Yeah.
And you'd have to be kind of foolish to
Yeah.
try a Haku,
Yeah, I've
you
talked to
know.
some other guys like Jim Brunzell and a few others. They said he's the nicest guy in the world. He'll give you the shirt off his back. He'll take care of you. Just don't
Yeah,
cross him.
yeah.
And
And you have no reason to cross him, I mean,
right.
he's that good of a guy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. So okay, a little bit more. You had some characters after Demolition, you know,
Yeah.
and did you enjoy doing those, or because you were Repo Man, you were when you went to WCW, you were some different characters every week. Did you enjoy that, or is that just something that they kind of said, "Oh, you got to do this"?
I loved to be the Repo Man. That was
Yeah.
a great thing, and one of the reasons why I did it was I was going to turn babyface, and I was going to do a lot of stuff for Make-A-Wish. That's kind of what I wanted
Oh,
to do,
okay.
and I thought it was a great character that if I was a real bad guy, a real terrible person,
Mm-hmm.
that once you turn good guy, then you're really a good guy. And that was kind of my thought
Okay.
in my head. And later on, I went to Vince and said, Vince, when am I going to change babyface?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm starting to have a hard time working as a heel because I'm starting to get some cheers here and there. People are kind of liking the gimmick,
Yeah.
And he says, Barry, you will never be a babyface here. And I said, well, that's not what we agreed.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm sorry. He says, you're going to be a heel. And so a couple of months later, I said to Vince, I said, well, Vince, I said, I'm going to put my notice in.
Yeah.
And he gave me a look like, you're putting your notice in? And I said, yeah. I said, that's not what I agreed on. This is,
Yeah.
I want people to boo me or cheer me. I want them to hate me or love me. I don't want any in-between stuff.
Yeah.
And I was kind of an in-between guy at the last,
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
And so I put my notice in and I left.
Huh.
Not too many people say that, huh?
Not too many. No, not too many.
so,
That's
so then
pretty.
I went home and I thought to myself, I'm just going to stay out of this business for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I sold cars at a car lot. And then John Nord and myself were working at the car lot together. And John says, hey, Barry, let's call Vince. So we're in our office one day, and John calls Vince, and Vince gets on the phone. And, hey, what are you guys doing? To me, Vince was a great guy. I always got along with Vince. He was honest until he didn't make me a baby face. But business is business, and
Right.
that wasn't what was in line for him.
Yeah.
So, anyways, we were talking, and we said, hey, Vince, John and I want to team up together, and we want to come up to work with you. And Vince just started laughing. He goes, yeah, that's not going to happen. He says, but I'll tell you what, I really appreciate you guys calling. We talked for probably a half hour,
Yeah.
And for him to take the call and do all that, I mean, it was a great deal. So anyways, we hung up, and then I said, hey, let me make a call. Let's call up Eric Bischoff. He was the boss in WCW down there.
Yep.
And John goes, I don't know Eric Bischoff. I said, well, I've known him through people. Let's get a meeting up there. So anyways, it ended up being where we were wrestling at the Target Center, and I called Eric. I said, hey, can John Nord and I team up against a couple of guys on TV and just see what you think,
Mm-hmm.
So we were at the Target Center in Minneapolis, and WCW comes there, and John and I tagged up, and we tore it up, you know. And then after the show, Eric says, well, I'll give you a call. So anyways, Eric Eric calls me up and he says, "Yeah, Barry, you and John aren't going to be a tag team." He says, "It's just we don't need tag teams, but I'd like to meet with you. Can you come up to Atlanta to the office? I'd like to talk to you."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Yeah, okay." So I ended up going to Atlanta, and I was in his office, and I said, "So Eric, can you hire me?" And he says, "Yeah, I can hire you." And he looked at me and he says, "Well, what do you think you should get paid?" And I said, "Well, Eric," I said, "I think I'm worth about $1 million." And he looks at me and he goes, "What? $1 million? How can I justify $1 million?" And I said, "Well," I said, "I can beat everybody in the territory in about 30 seconds." And I says, "And then I'll be the new WCW champion." And I said, "Then I'll be worth $1 million." And he looked at me and he says, "That's a really, really good answer." And he says, "I can't offer you that, but how about $150,000 and you don't have to hardly even work?" And I said, "You know what? I'll take that job." So I took that job, and
yeah.
then John ended up getting a job there too, and we had a great time.
Yeah.
And then,
John, go ahead, Barry. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Barry.
Well, and then so when I was in there, Flair was the booker at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I sat with Rick, and Rick says, "Barry," he says, "you got to come up with some kind of a gimmick for you." And I said, "Well, what do you want?" He says, "Well, I want, maybe a truck driver or something like that." And I said, "Well, what the hell am I going to do being a truck driver, And he says, "Well, just think of some stuff." So, Arn Anderson, me and him were together all the time, best friends,
Mm-hmm.
talked all the time, and Bobby Eaton.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Hey, you guys," I said, "we need to go to Bobby's garage." And I said, "Let's have a few beers, and you got to come up with a name for me." So we were sitting on the couch, down south they have couches in the garage, and it's beautiful at night, and they got the refrigerator in the garage, and we probably had a case of beer down. And I told Arn, I said, "Arn, you got to come up with a name for me. I'm going to be a truck driver, and I'm just going to be a mean son of a gun. Think up a good name for me and what I got to do." So after about 10 beers, Arn's glasses come down lower on his nose, and he looks at me and he goes, "You're the Blacktop Bully." And I just went, "That's the greatest name ever." So I called up Rick the next day and I said, "Rick, you're talking to the Blacktop Bully, and I'm mean and nasty and all that stuff." And he loved it. So then he said, "Well, I'm going to team you up with Colonel Parker, and we're going to do some stuff where you're just sitting outside the ring, and you're a fan, and you're going to start getting on everybody's case, And that's when I, kind of had a feud with Ricky Steamboat and Dustin, and then I got thrown in jail one night, and it was great. I loved it. That was one of my favorite gimmicks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blacktop Bully. That's interesting. John Nord, I forgot you had been to school with him as well. What was it like teaming up with him and wrestling? Was it?
John Nord is one of the funniest guys you've ever met.
Yeah.
He would do anything for you. If you were in trouble and you say, "Hey, John, you got to help me out," John would do everything he could to help you out. Yeah. That's the kind of guy he was.
That's great.
Wild man. He was just, how do you explain John Nord? I love the guy.
Yeah. Did he earn his name, the Berserker?
Yeah, he was the Berserker. I don't know how they came up with that name, but, when I was up in the WWF at that time, Bill and I and Fuji traveled everywhere together. So I didn't see a lot of my friends on the road there. I'd see them in the buildings. So, we kind of stayed away from everybody so we, didn't get in trouble,
Yeah.
It would have been terrible if, Wayne Bloom and Kurt Hennig and Nord and myself and all of us guys got together, because we were in trouble all the time at home before we got into wrestling. I couldn't imagine when we were on the road making money and away from our wives and everything, what would have happened.
Yeah.
But, John's a great guy. Great guy.
So, speaking of Mr. Fuji, working with him was, what was that like for you?
Well, Fuji was actually, a real manager for us.
Mm-hmm.
When he was outside, shaking the cane at us and doing all that, he was actually critiquing our matches. So
okay.
when the night was done, we'd drive 250 miles, 300 miles to the next town.
Mm-hmm.
He'd be telling us what looked good, what didn't look good.
Okay.
And Fuji was a good wrestler in his day, so
yeah,
he knew everything about the business, and we really did listen to what he said.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was a great guy to have in our corner, and I think he's kind of what made us the bad guys. More,
a little bit more validation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Big card events. You've been in a lot of them. You were in Starrcade, the Great American Bash, WrestleMania, Royal Rumble. Those big card events for you, what was probably one of your favorite ones, I guess, that you were involved in of those pay-per-views?
Well, the Royal Rumble, and fans bring it up to us all the time. Mm-hmm. When Axe and Smash were the first two out that one day and we had to fight each other.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite ones because, we didn't know that we were going to be 1 and 2 coming out.
Oh, okay.
Bill knew he was number 1, but I didn't know that until right before I went out there. And when we went out there, we just kind of looked at each other and we started laughing. And then we just started hitting each other. But what was really neat about that was the third guy out was Andre the Giant. And then we started fighting Andre. So it was, I thought, Vince and, Pat Patterson was the booker, I believe, at that time. And I think they came up with, that was one of the best ideas that they've ever came up with. It really worked. The people went nuts.
Pat Patterson, I have been told that he was probably one of the smartest guys in the business.
Yeah, and I loved Pat. He was a great guy. I got along with him really well. And I used to play golf with his partner Louie. And
okay.
Down in Florida all the time, and those two were fantastic together too.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of good things about Pat Patterson and what a great mind he had for the business and a good person.
Yeah, I believe he's the one that invented the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you never worked in the AWA.
Never did.
Well, was there a reason for that? I mean, you're from Minnesota. A lot of those guys, whether your classmates, went through there at one point or another. Was there any particular reason why you never worked up there?
Well, I just had jobs everywhere else. I never really had an opportunity to come back here, you know. And I've talked to Vern and Greg, and I worked for them through other companies.
Yeah.
Like I was wrestling for Crockett at the time. Mm-hmm. We went up and wrestled Baron, the Crusher, and the Bruiser in Comiskey Park.
Right. Yep.
And that was, it was like a double promotion deal where, we came in from Charlotte and wrestled those guys, and we did that in Baltimore and some different towns. We did that for. So I was never working for Vern at the time,
right?
But worked with him, and we talked, but like I say, I always had jobs everywhere else. I didn't really need to come up here, and at that time I wasn't living here.
Okay.
I was living down south, so it worked out better by not being here.
Yeah. Plus, I'm sure you didn't miss the winters.
At
that time.
Yeah, and speaking of the winters, now I have a really hard time with this cold. It's killing me.
Yeah.
It's back in the day, I used to snowmobile and played hockey and skated and ice fished and did everything, but now I just go outside and I freeze to death.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm from Wisconsin. I remember those
So
days.
where you live now?
I live in Missouri,
Oh, you're
which
living in Missouri.
which
Okay.
actually tonight, well, when this drops, it'll be long gone. But we're supposed to get 6 to 12 inches tonight. I'm in
Yeah. Geez,
southern Missouri.
so you're south of Kansas City?
Yeah, I used to live in Kansas City. I just moved down by Springfield about a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I drove right through there not too long
Oh,
ago. My wife and I went down and uh, we went to see the Pioneer Woman.
yeah. Okay.
You ever heard of the Pioneer Woman?
I've heard of it. Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of my wife's favorite, on the
Okay.
cooking shows.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
they're down in Oklahoma down there.
Okay.
And, yeah, we had a great time. And I told her, I said, well, if we're going to go see the Pioneer Woman,
Yeah.
we're going to go down and see the Duck Dynasty then.
There you go.
So after we went to see the Pioneer Woman, we went down to the Duck Dynasty and visited their place down there.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, you were in different promotions, but you were the big ones were the WWF and the NWA. So out of those two, where did you like working the most? And I guess why?
Well, both of them had their good things and bad things,
Right.
They were both everywhere I worked. I really loved where I was at, and I loved being in the ring wrestling.
Yeah.
The bad, maybe it'd be better to tell you the bad things about it.
Okay. I'm ready.
Well, when in the Charlotte territory, the traveling was unbelievable. How much travel you did.
Yeah.
One day you're in Atlanta, and the next day you're in Richmond, Virginia, and then at night you're down in, Charlotte. I mean, it was every day you're on the road,
Yeah.
and long trips. And when you're young, it was great, but as you got older, it kind of got to you, especially when you had a family.
Yeah.
And then the WWF, you were in a plane every single day, no sleep. I always tell my wife, I said, I haven't slept since 1980 when I got in the business, and that's kind of the truth.
Yeah.
I still can't sleep.
Yeah.
But every place was just great to work with, and to work with the different people, and I made so many friends.
Yeah.
And today I would think I could call any one of them and say, hey, I'm coming into town. You want to come to lunch? And they'd be right there.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, when I talked to Greg and Jim, they spoke very highly of you, and I've always wanted to get this with you, and I'm so glad we were able to today. I got a couple more questions, and then I'm going to let you go. So my next question is, pro wrestling from when you started to the time that you retired, was there any significant changes in the business?
Unbelievable changes. When we talked about when Rick Rude and the Road Warriors and myself, when we broke in the business, Eddie Sharkey never really told us it was fake,
Yeah.
We thought that it was real, but yet you let guys do things to you. That's kind of what the thought process was, And we used to beat each other up. I mean, after camp, we'd go to work at the bar, and it was like, holy shit, I hope we don't get in a fight tonight because we're going to get killed tonight. I mean, it was tough. And then being in Mid-South wrestling down there, when I was Krusher Kruschev, people slit your car tires and broke your windshields. And, I almost got killed a few times. Somebody threw a cup full of batteries and hit me in the face. And
oh my gosh!
I've had everything. And then, in the Charlotte territory, people pulling guns on you and knives, and then all of a sudden, it became the entertainment business, and now being a bad guy wasn't really a bad guy. It was almost like you were a good guy as a bad guy.
Yeah.
So the people didn't want to kill you anymore, but they knew that they had to boo you because you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
So it was just a huge turnaround. And, you know, for years, we never got to talk to our opponents. We did everything in the ring, you know.
Yeah.
The babyface would come out of one dressing room and the heels out of another dressing room, and you'd send messages back and forth with the referee. You know, that's kind of how you talk.
Yeah.
And then once I got up with Vince in the WWF, all of a sudden everybody's in the same dressing room, and both of you walk through a curtain down to the ring, and it's like, God, this is different, and you felt really, really weird.
Yeah.
Exposing the business, you know.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the big change that I seen. It went from real to entertainment.
Yeah. Do you think that was good or bad?
Well, it had to be good because the people are still watching it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
I suppose your safety's a lot better now, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh.
So do you watch wrestling anymore? Do you watch any WWE or AEW or anything like that? Or
you know, I have to say I don't, but
yeah.
Every once in a while I'll see a match. I watched AJ Styles the other day. Unbelievable worker he is.
Yeah.
One of my favorites for a long time was Santino.
Okay, yeah.
God, I loved watching him because he was a character, you know.
He was, yeah.
And, you know, Joe Hennig, I really liked Joe Hennig.
Yeah.
And they sure didn't do him justice.
No, they did not.
And now Wayne Bloom's son, his name is, the heck is his name in the rest? Von Wagner.
Okay.
He's in NXT, and he's coming up. He's got a great look, and I think he's going to be really good.
Good. All right.
He's about 6'5", about 260 pounds, and just looks great. Wow. So he's going to be one to watch.
All right. One more question for you.
All right.
What are you up to now? What are you got any projects coming or?
Well, you know, like I've been wanting to do this show with you forever, and I'm just like nonstop all the time. But I you know, I started a company. I don't know if you knew that 16 years ago.
Okay.
And so for 14 years, I worked 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. I really pushed it hard.
Yeah.
And I sold the company 2 years ago.
Okay.
And I retired, but my wife was still working. But I was going on the road every weekend doing autographs and doing all that stuff. And then, you know, going back and forth to Michigan to see my son with my grandkids.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't even know how I did anything at home because I work so much, but I have no time now when I'm retired.
Yeah.
It actually seems like I have less time. And then I tried to start playing golf last summer, and I didn't have much time for that. And, you know, I just say I'm busy. And, you know, we just started a new fan club, the Demolition Fan Club, which we're really excited about. 80swrestlingcon.com is the guy who started it is a good friend of ours, and it's turning out really well. So, you know, if it's like $100 or whatever, you get 4 or 5 signed pictures, and you know, you get to talk to us and all this stuff. So, anyways, but you'll have to check that out. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now, and you know, like I say, I'm traveling a lot. So
well, that's very interesting. I'm gonna check that out, and I'll put it on the description down there for your fan club. And ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Barry Darsow, thank you so much, sir, for coming on here tonight. I really appreciate it.
Hey, and thank you, and I'm so glad I got to do your show.
Oh, I am too. I finally got together, and folks, he is a busy man. I've been trying to get him on this show since probably, I think, October. And he is busy. He's not just saying that. He is actually really busy. So, Mr. Darsow, sir, thank you so much for coming on.
All right, and you take care of yourself, ready?
You do the same, and folks, thanks for watching, or I'm sorry, listening, and we'll talk to you soon.